if you have a temperament that when others are fearful, you're going to get scared yourself, you are not going to make a lot of money in securities over time in all probability. And that, people really, if they didn't look at quotations, but of course the whole world is urging them to look at quotations and more than that, do something based on small changes in quotations. But they buy a stock and they think if it goes up, it's wonderful. And if it goes down, it's bad. We think just the opposite. When it goes down, we love it because we'll buy more. And if it goes up, it kills us to buy more.
People behave very peculiarly in terms of the reactions because they're human beings, and they get excited when others get excited. They get greedy when others get greedy. They get fearful when others get fearful. And they'll continue to do so. And you will see things you won't believe in your lifetime and securities markets. And the country will do very well over time, but you will see these huge waves. And if you can stay objective throughout that, if you can detach yourself temperamentally from the crowd, you get very rich. And you won't have to be very bright. It doesn't take brains, it takes temperament. It takes the ability to sit there and look at something. When I started out in 1950, I would go through and find things at 2 times earnings, and they were perfectly decent businesses, and people wanted jobs at those companies, and everybody knew they were going to be around, and they wouldn't buy them at 2 times earnings, and that's when interest rates were 2.5%.
Who do you want to see in the following video? Let me know in the comments section below.
You say to yourself, how could it be that you could have a country that was doing better and better and better and better? Citizens were living, every generation was living better than the one that preceded it. But you had these huge changes, big gains a few times, long periods of stagnation. 20 years, that's a long time to do nothing. The answer is that investors behave in very human ways, which is they get very excited during bull markets and they look in the rearview mirror and they say, I made money last year, I'm going to make more money this year, so this time I'll borrow, or the neighbor says, I wasn't in last year when that neighbor was dumber than I made a lot of money, so I'm going to go in this year. So they're always looking in the rearview mirror. And when they look in the rearview mirror and they see a lot of money having been made in the last few years, they plow in and they just push and push and push on prices. And when they look in the rearview mirror and they see no money having been made, they just say this is a lousy place to be. So they don't care what's going on in the underlying business. And it's astounding, but that makes for huge opportunity. Just huge opportunity. I've lived through roughly half, in an investing sense, about half that period. And I've had that long period of stagnation from 48, from 65 to 82, 17 years. I wrote an article for Forbes in 1979. I just said, how can this be? Pension funds in 1970 put 100 and some % of their new money in stock because they were wild about stocks. Then they got a lot cheaper, and they put a record low in, 9% of their net new money in 1978 when stocks were way cheaper.
Before moving forward, we all can agree that investing can be stressful and challenging, especially when stocks you own go down 30 or even 60%. In those moments of pressure, you need a positive distraction, simple little things that can put a smile on your face. We created funny gifts for investors that should instantly make you or someone you care about feel better. Don't let negative emotions and fear influence your decisions. Click the link in the description below.
Over a long period of time, markets will behave pretty much like they've always behaved. Most of the time, they will be valuing businesses in a reasonable range, and they will go crazy periodically on the upside and downside. In 1974, they went totally crazy on the downside. You can't believe how cheap major businesses got in the period like 74. Businesses were doing fine. The Washington Post Company sold in the market, the whole company, for $80 million. It owned the Washington Post newspaper, it owned Newsweek, it owned 4 great big network television stations, including one in Washington, and one in Miami, one in Jacksonville, one in Hartford. It had half interest in Bowater Mercy paper, 800,000 acres of timberland. It had third interest in the International Herald Tribune. Didn't owe any money to speak of. $80 million. It's a joke. At that time, you could have announced that you were going to hold an auction of their properties in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean at 2 in the morning, and you would have had people show up who would have paid at least $500 million for those same properties. Now imagine buying $500 million worth of properties, good businesses, for $80 million. You know, in this world, all these people with high IQs around studying finance at major business schools, all kinds of things, 1/5 or 1/6 what the business is worth. The Graham family was obviously both honest and talented. They were in good businesses. Well, that company today, they haven't discovered oil. They've got pretty much the same businesses. You know, it's now selling for $7 billion or thereabouts. But there's nothing magic. They haven't discovered anything. You know, it was a $500 million business that became a $7 billion business over a 30-year period with good management and decent properties and all of that. And you could have bought it for $80 million. You know, we own at Berkshire some Washington Post stock that we paid $10 million, less than $10 million for, and which is now worth $1.2 billion or something of the sort. And it was nothing esoteric about it at all. It's just people go crazy. And if you ask me about the financial markets of the future, I will absolutely confidently predict. I just don't know when, and I don't know what order. I don't know whether people will get greedy before they get fearful or vice versa. But over the next 30 or 40 years, you'll see some incredible aberrations, and you have to be able to think independently at that time.
If you want to learn more about how to invest, check out one of the videos you see on the screen.